Hi, I'm Dave Zersen, and I'd like to share some thoughts with members of St. Matthew's in this post-Easter season. There are many challenges which we're facing, questions, uncertainties, different schedules, different routines, different controls than we've ever known before, and we find it difficult to make sense out of that, especially as we look at the months to come, the seasons to come, and wonder how long is this going to last. In the lessons we've been reading in this Easter season and post-Easter season, we're confronted with some comments, some characters who wrestle with change in much the same way that we are. In the Gospel according to Mark, and for that matter in all four Gospels, there were stories about the women, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, Salome, going to the tomb to anoint Jesus with spices, but they weren't certain who was going to roll away this huge stone for them, and when they get there, suddenly they are confronted with the fact that the stone has been rolled away. What does that mean? It's more than just a physical appearance. It's something powerfully spiritual and psychological, because they don't know what the future holds if the stone has been rolled away. If the tomb is empty, what can that possibly mean for them who have been followers of Jesus for these years? So with that uncertainty, they're asked to face the future, and yet if we ask them in the future, had we that opportunity 5 years hence to say, well, ladies, what do you think of that experience now when you look back on it? They would surely have said, we learned that God is in charge of everything, even that. There's a story that was popularized a few years ago by Spencer Johnson. Who Moved My Cheese was the name of the book. It was a brief not an analogy, but an allegory about some mice who were troubled by the cheese having been moved, and it was speaking to people in business and industry who were not used to some of the changes that were taking place and who were being asked to face the meaning of change in their lives. It was a very popular story because everyone could identify with the allegorical meaning. We are all facing change, and what does it mean for us, and how are we going to deal with it? There's another passage that comes from John 20, in which Mary is wondering what the future holds, and she's in the garden, and she thinks that the voice she hears is maybe the voice of a gardener, but then she recognizes it more carefully. It's Jesus, and she reaches out to touch him, and Jesus says, "Don't hold on to me." I like that particular translation because it speaks to us psychologically as well as physically. It's one thing to say, I'm now a spiritual being, I'm a resurrection body, and you can't touch me. But it's perhaps more meaningful for us to treat that psychologically and to realize that one cannot continue to hold on to something that has been so meaningful and so important to us forever, because times change. And with that change comes new understandings and new opportunities. And so Jesus is asking Mary and all of us to take a look at the future and to realize that with the change that takes place, we have new understandings that need to be incorporated in that. If we were to ask Mary 5 years hence what she thought about that experience, she would also have told us that it's not possible to assume that you have control over every moment in your life, because only God knows what's taking place in the larger sense. And we have to allow God to have that opportunity to take us into his future. There's a wonderful play that's been written by Eugene O'Neill, American playwright, entitled Lazarus Laughed. And it covers much of the same territory that we know from the Mary and Martha and Lazarus story. But then comes the moment when Lazarus is called out of the tomb, and he enters back into life, and he laughs, and he laughs, and he can't stop laughing, so much so that people are just annoyed by his constant laughing and say to him, Lazarus, what's going on here? What do you know that we don't know? And Lazarus answers, I know that death is done and has no control over me, no power over me, and as a result, my future is open, and I can continue to enter into that future without any hindrance. There's a powerful message for us in that story, because we too are faced with changes. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the months ahead, in the seasons ahead. We don't know whether jobs will be reopened. We don't know if businesses will be reopened. We don't know if universities will be reopened. There's a great deal of uncertainty. And yet in these passages from Scripture, as well as in the Lazarus play, we're being encouraged to continue, because life goes on as it always does once death is done. And our death is behind us, that's for sure. As Christians, we know that. We have died in baptism and risen to a new life, and that new life continues because God's in charge. Have a great day.